Good evening. We'll call the May 2019 Steering Committee to order. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Blair?
Here.
Commissioner Harris?
Here.
Commissioner Cush?
Here, present.
Commissioner McAdoo?
Here.
Commissioner Reed?
Here.
Commissioner Rather?
Here.
Commissioner Stevens?
Present. Thank you. Our first item is to consider the minutes from last month's meeting. Is there a motion for that?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion the minutes are in order, and I move for them to be accepted.
Commissioner Harris moves for approval of the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Cush, any questions, comments? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, motion carries. The next item was to appoint someone to the Public Building Authority, and I don't believe that we received any applications for that. So it will just remain open until next month, I suppose. The next item is to fill a vacancy on the Board of Zoning Appeals. We have 2 applications for that are on your iPad. We have Ms. Amber Brown and also Mr. Keith Bratcher. So we'll ask each of them to give a brief statement to the committee about why they're applying, and then we can decide where to move forward with that. So Ms. Brown's application is first, so we'll ask her to speak first.
Hi everybody, so I'm Amber Brown. I've been a lifelong resident here in Rutherford County. Spent a little bit of time, went away for college to the University of Tennessee. So since then I've been in the human resources capacity for about 10 years. So truly excited about the expansion that's happening here in Rutherford County and just want to be a part of those efforts, be an asset to the county as well. So your consideration is appreciated.
Thank you.
Commissioner McAdoo.
Also, I'd like to make one statement that she is the daughter of Veronica Buchanan, the one that term that we were looking at.
We won't hold that.
Are you trying to?
Yeah, please don't. More favorable.
I am trying to help her because her mother did serve faith.
She did a good job. Any other questions for Ms. Brown? All right, thank you. Mr. Bratcher?
My name is Keith Bratcher. I served on the Board of Zoning from 2005 to 14. I applied at that time to want to continue to serve, but was not reappointed. But anyway, the 9 years I served on there, I don't think any of those years I ever missed a meeting. I attended some continuing education classes at the MTSU for Board of Zoning of those years. Mr. Mossy set up. I also attended some classes that Mr. Mossy himself set up, so I have experience and I have done legal education, so I would like to serve.
Any questions for Mr. Bratcher? Commissioner Rather?
Mr. Bratcher, you put on here, and I know that the question says, do you currently serve on a board, which is, you do serve on a beer board.
I do.
We may have should have asked that question a little, maybe expounded on that a little more. You also are on the Highway Commission.
I'm elected to the Highway Commission, that's correct. And Beer Board was the first board I've ever been appointed to. I've been on that board for 26 years. Got appointed there in 1993. So, I mean, I'm dedicated, so I'm here and I'd like to serve. I've been a lifelong resident of Rutherford County all my life. Just recently retired in July of 18. I was a captain of Murfreesboro Fire Department for 35 years.
And you've been on the Highway Commission how long?
I first got elected in 2002.
Oh, thought you were on there longer than that.
Any other questions?
I have a question for Ms. Brown,
Yeah.
and I'll be quiet.
Sure.
You don't have to stand up.
Okay.
So I don't know if you know this, Keith talked about the continuing education. The Board of Zoning Appeals every year has to take 6-8 hours or whatever it is of continuing education. Is that going to interfere with anything if you're working in Nashville and living here, or?
No, so the good thing about my current employer is that I work from home probably about 80% of the time, so I'm here. So I do have the ability to serve and definitely give back, so I do have availability.
Okay.
And I'm flexible.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to cease the nominations, and we'll take these two to a vote.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Cush, second by Commissioner Harris to nominate both applicants and each member choose one. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So please call the roll.
Commissioner Blair,
Amber Brown, please.
Commissioner Harris,
Ms. Brown?
Commissioner Cush,
Ms. Brown.
Commissioner McAdoo,
Ms. Brown.
Commissioner Reed,
Ms. Brown.
Commissioner Rather,
Ms. Brown?
Commissioner Stevens.
Brown.
7-0.
So Ms. Brown, your name will be submitted to the commission meeting next Thursday night at 6 o'clock if you'd like to be there for that.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes.
could for another second, I was served with Keith for several years on the Board of Zoning Appeals, and he's talked about the boards he served on and how long he did those, and retired firefighter. I've talked to Keith about this in the past, the respect and admiration I have for the service to our community, both in the capacity as an elected highway commissioner in the Beer Board, but certainly more so as a firefighter. A lot of people think they drag around hoses and squirt water on fires, but every time they get a call, they don't know if they're coming back. So I just want to say I appreciate the way you serve this county.
Okay, our next item is to announce a vacancy in the office of County Coroner. This is to fill the unexpired term of Mike Nunley. Term expires December 2020. We need to announce two vacancies on the Linebaugh Library Board, Lisa Trail and Kathy Campbell. Those terms expire in June 2022. And also to announce a vacancy to fill the unexpired term of Jamie Burris. That term expires in June 2020. We need to announce two vacancies on the Community Care Board. It's Frankie Johnson and Mike Nunley. We need to announce a county employee representative on the Insurance Committee, a vacancy in that office to fill the unexpired term of Joe Hafner, term to expire January 2022. And while we're bringing that up, I don't think that the commission fills that position. I pulled the resolution for when this committee was created, and it has 5 employees of Rutherford County, 2 employees from County General to be selected by the Benefits and Insurance Committee from applications forwarded with recommendation of their department head. So I think that the Insurance Committee, Risk Management Committee needs to be the ones that appoint their members according to this resolution. So I don't think that needs to be back on our agenda next month. They'll be able to pick the members for their committee. We need to consider reappointment of a judicial commissioner for the town of Smyrna for General Sessions Court, Brandy Dover. Her nomination was forwarded by the Smyrna judge and should be on your iPad. Is there a motion for her reappointment?
So moved.
Commissioner Blair, is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Reed? Commissioner McAdoo?
Can you explain to me, to the committee, why Smyrna set up their own court, Smyrna General Session Court, and we are electing their commissioners?
I'm not exactly sure of the relationship, but I know that they pay fees to the county. That they have to pay a substantial portion of their fees to the county because they take away, business from the county judges here. We've always had the Smyrna nominees come through our steering committee and for the full commission. I'm not sure why we have to elect them if that's a state law that says that, but we can probably have an answer for that question by the commission meeting.
I would appreciate it if we did.
Doesn't the judicial commissioners, because we have them here at the sheriff's office, aren't they part of the county judicial system?
They are, and the commission elects those people as well, and they are the ones that will help sign warrants and so forth.
I just wonder if the judicial commissioners are kind of in that same situation where the county does make that decision. I don't know, just a thought.
Well, we will have an answer for you at the commission meeting.
Thank you.
So, but I know we've done this repeatedly
Yeah.
for the time that I've been here, so that is an interesting question. Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is our employee complaints about human resources or budget department. Mayor Ketchum, would you let us know where the status of that private act is?
Sure. After County Commission voted to bring the Director of Human Services back under the umbrella of the mayor, it was forwarded to change the private act from whatever time that was done, back in 99, 2000, whenever that was done. So the private act went in. Representative Baum submitted it. They have a new committee in the House that Speaker Cassada has appointed. It deals strictly with local resolutions or private acts, so it went directly to that before it closed, and then Senator Reeves received a copy of it as well. He introduced it to state and local in the Senate before it closed. It has passed both committees, passed by both bodies of the Senate and the General Assembly to alter our private act, and it's sitting on the governor's desk to be signed, so it's passed. And so that means that the General Assembly signed it down last Thursday, so it's in effect.
Okay, so next month then we should have the governor's signature on that.
Yeah, and then governor's signature, it will come back and just be basically put before the full commission for an affirmation vote at that time to change our private act.
Well, I guess without objection, then we can move this to the next month's things. We still need to consider what to do if somebody complains about the budget office, but it sounds like the human resources one will be taken care of for us. So is there any objection to just moving that to the next month? And hopefully we can put this issue to rest. Okay, we'll do that. Number 10, evaluation of Human Resource Director. Commissioner Rather asked that this be put on our agenda.
And Mr. Rather asked that we remove that from the agenda
Okay. Well, that's easy
and
enough.
move on to number 11.
Any other questions or comments about that from the committee? All right. Number 11, information about reducing the number of county commissioners. I forwarded out information about that last week, and Ms. Vicki put that on the SharePoint website, so the information's out there for you to consider. Is there any discussion or questions or motions on that topic? The best time to consider that would probably be when we do our redistricting process in 2021.
Which is coming up.
In about 2 years.
And when will we start selecting the committee to be on that?
The census results came out, it seemed like in early 2011, mid-2011. So once we get that information, then we'll be able to move forward with drawing the boundaries. We can't do that until we know what the numbers are and how to divide the districts fairly. So
But selecting that committee.
it'll probably about 2 years from now.
Okay.
But this is good information to consider until then. We'll know where to find it in 2 years when we need it.
Okay.
So, number 12 is the litigation list. This is on your iPad. Is there any question about that or comments you'd like to make about the litigation list?
Yeah. Can I direct?
Commissioner Harris.
Nick, how are we looking on Candy Crush?
Yeah, I'm happy to tell you what I can. Just be mindful that in these litigation lists, try to keep it pretty bland, just to preserve attorney-client privilege and confidentiality. And we don't want to broach that or abrogate that. So the current posture, as I put in there, is there were motions to dismiss that were filed by the state defendants and our side, and the district court denied those motions to dismiss. Motions to dismiss are done very early on in the litigation, and the claim is that based on what has been pled in the complaint, it fails to state a claim. So we filed that motion, the district court denied it, and we have appealed that decision to the Court of Appeals. So we're currently in a holding pattern as we work on a brief for the appellate court. And our hope is that the appellate court overturns the district court's decision.
What are we looking at? 5, 6 months?
That's a fair estimate. Briefing takes 2 to 3 months, and then depending on the Court of Appeals docket, it could be an additional 2 to 4 months. So I think that's a conservative estimate.
Yeah, just keep us informed.
Will do. If you have any questions individually, just give me a call in my office.
No problem.
I got a question. There's several defendants in that case. So basically, who are we representing? I know we represent the sheriff, and I think with Rutherford County, we represent Rutherford County and the sheriff.
That's correct.
Are those only two?
Named defendants, yes.
Okay.
Now, there may be other ancillary witnesses that were involved that are employees or agents of the county, but in terms of the named defendant, that's who we represent.
The main department I'm looking at is the DA department. Who's representing that?
They fall under the state. So District Attorney Jennings Jones, and he's represented by the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
And there's another assistant district attorney that is represented not by us.
Okay, so we do have help on that, so to speak. Okay.
And of course, Smyrna is involved with it too on some of the cases, and they're representing their self as well, so. Any other questions about the litigation list? All right, the last item then officially is the updated legal services agreement. This was sent out last week on Thursday or Friday for your consideration, and it was put on the SharePoint website also for consideration of the public. Does anybody have any questions or guidance on where we should go with that?
Mr. Chairman, since this is kind of your area of expertise on the litigation and extra services fee, the $167.94, that appears to be very reasonable to me.
It's a very reduced rate. If we hired a law firm to represent us, without this being in place, it would probably be $250, $300 an hour here locally. And then if we had to go to Nashville or somewhere else for a firm, it might be $400 or $500 an hour possibly. So it is a very, very good rate that we have with them. I did have one question for Mr. Christensen. Let me find it on the iPad here. It was about indemnifying or representing the county attorney in case of a claim is filed against you. It says that the county attorney is going to carry malpractice insurance to cover, professional negligence or what, not like that. But then it also says that the county is responsible for your defense or backing you up in case you get sued. And I was wondering if you could explain that to us or help us understand that a little bit.
Yeah, I'll just tell you what I understand it to be from my perspective here. And let me also say that I drafted this taking what had already been in place. So this is something that has been in place, this provision, since its inception. In this line of work, as a lawyer, you never can dictate how you get sued and in what name you get sued in. And in particular, doing county defense or municipal defense work, you have a wide variety of lawsuits, some of which can be filed by pro se litigants. I'm handling a couple of those right now. They're on your litigation list. That means that they're not represented by a lawyer, so they kind of don't know what they're doing. Some might be filed by inmates at our local jail, and so we can't dictate who they name. And so there's always the potential, just like they could name a county commissioner, that I get named, or someone in my firm who's working on a case gets named as a defendant in dealing with whatever matter it is. And in those circumstances, that's not something that, even though I was acting as county attorney, that I don't want to be personally liable for just because my name gets slapped on some sort of litigation. So in that regard, the provision reads that the county will in good faith endure to represent those types of lawsuits. Now, we're talking about things that would fall outside of a malpractice insurance. Under this agreement, my firm and myself carry malpractice insurance for any negligence, professional negligence, or errors or omissions that occur in me or my firm representing you all. So that's not what we're asking you to cover. If I mess up or my firm messes up, that's something that would fall under the malpractice insurance.
Commissioner Rather, do you have a question?
Well, I have several. I was wanting to give some other people time to talk, but on this particular subject we're discussing, the way it's, I get what you're saying. I understand exactly what you're saying. Based on the language, and it was kind of similar to an analogy I heard today. If you're walking down the steps from here and you knock somebody down the steps and get sued, then we're covering you. I understand what you're saying, but it's kind of open to anything that you get sued for just because you're our county attorney.
Well, the way I
Does that
think...
make sense?
Yeah, well, I can understand that position. The way I read it is it says in good faith. So if I'm saying that you're supposed to represent me, you don't believe that that's really your duty to represent me with respect to that particular scenario, that may be something that would be broached when and if it were to occur. But there are more occasions I can think of, hopefully I'm not negligent walking down these steps, but there are far more occasions I can think of where a disgruntled inmate in a local jail or a person who has been allegedly wronged by one of our general sessions judges, where I might be on a case, the underlying case, may sue in federal court and say Nick Christensen, county attorney. And in that regard, that's something I believe that I shouldn't have personal liability.
Sure. I get that part. I get that. You just, and I'm just going to apologize that I read things and I sometimes read more into it, or my mind and imagination gets to wandering unless it's very specific. So that answered that question. And anybody else wants to talk, I do have a few more, but I want to give others a chance to talk because I've been talking since we got in.
Commissioner Blair.
This is, I do not have a law degree, wouldn't want to have a law degree. But in most cases when public entities are sued, like town councils or boards, they sue the entity, but they also name the members of that entity or that board or that council. I guess you call that shotgunning in a way, that they name everybody. Are there occurrences where, since you're our attorney, that they would try to sue you along with us? I mean, is that pretty bizarre, or does state law not allow that to be?
I'm not aware of any state law that would not allow a plaintiff to throw my name in the style of a lawsuit and name me as a defendant, but your example is a germane one in that it's very common that if a board or a county commission gets sued, that someone will also throw on their individual county commissioners, and I would expect that you all would expect the county to defend the lawsuit on your behalf, and we do that routinely. Now, I can't think of an instance where we haven't, but I could imagine one if there is some sort of intentional or criminal or malicious conduct by the individual involved. The county may want to rethink whether that person was actually acting in the scope of their employment or capacity as a county person. But that example, I think, is germane to what I'm suggesting here, that if I'm named in my capacity as a county attorney just for the sole fact of being a county attorney, that's an expectation I would have that the county would similarly represent me like they would you in that circumstance.
Certainly.
Commissioner Garrett.
Nick, I don't know the answer to this. If we had to hire outside attorneys for litigation, how do we do that? Do you look at other firms, or you just have one firm in mind? I mean, do you bring this to the commission with choices?
Yeah, that's in here. Let me give me a moment here. Or at least at one time, it was.
It's on page 4 at the bottom.
Yeah. So section 4, subsection B, the county commission may, with the advice of the county mayor and county attorney. So if an issue came up, it'd probably be on county mayor's radar first. Or it might be on one of y'all's, and y'all would probably call the county mayor or myself. And if it's something that would be deemed to maybe fall outside of our expertise, there's not much that we can't do at my firm, but there are copyright stuff, complex tax matters, patent litigation, malpractice. We've got certain people in our county that are EMS people or whatever. There may be an occasion to consult with outside counsel. And so I would likely try to get a referral or recommendation, but it ultimately is your election on who you want to pick, and that would have to go through an approval process by the county commission to outsource that particular matter to a particular attorney and or law.
Looks like it's back to you, Commissioner Rather.
Back to me, huh? So I think the prior legal services agreement actually had your office approving any outside counsel, if I remember correctly. So that language has changed, which was good because I was looking at that one. But anyway, just to clarify, this is the old, what's referred to as the old agreement with the...
I don't know what you're holding,
Well,
but assuming it is signed by Mayor Burgess.
let's
and-
assume this is the old one.
Right.
Or a copy of the old one. And all of its pages and pages of amendments. This new one that you sent us today, and I can read, I'm just clarifying this. This absolutely does away with this whole lock, stock, and barrel. This, you use the word supersede. Again, I know what that means. I'm just clarifying that. So this is gone, this is in place.
That's correct.
All right, we'll go real quick. I don't know who can answer this question. It may not be you that can answer it. The person that may answer it just walked out, possibly. Maybe the mayor can answer this. And just bear with me because I wasn't around during all the other amendments and the original agreement, so this is kind of like a new thing to me. On page 2, section 1, item A, I guess it's a little bit more, maybe a sentence more than halfway down, maybe 2/3 of the way down. It says, although the county attorney is an independent contractor, which again has changed from the original, which is, I think was asked for, is good. Rutherford County may handle his compensation like an employee. I don't know what that means, like an employee. I have a few subcontractors that they send me a bill and I write them a check. I don't know the difference.
Let me get Lisa back.
Okay.
Sign back.
I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
What's the difference
You know I was
between
going to ask this.
employee and independent contractor?
Well, that's not the question. I know the difference between the two. This one says that although the county attorney is an independent contractor, Rutherford County may handle his compensation like an employee because, like I was telling them, I have subcontractors. They send me a bill, I write them a check, and that's the end of it. So what does that mean, like an employee? What's different?
It's for the payroll purposes. So the way our accounting system's set up, I'll give you an example that's similar but not exact. We have poll workers at election time, and those poll workers only work during the election on election day. So they're set up in our accounting system and our payroll system like an employee, but they get just that stipend check for that.
Right.
And that's much the same way that our county attorney's set up. So what we've done is taken the budgeted dollars amount and we break that out over the 12-month cycle, and then it's handled that way only for the payroll purposes. Instead of setting up a separate accounts payable account, kind of helps to keep the two things separate. So the day-to-day stuff that's paid for under that budgetary agreement is separate from the other legal services agreements.
So like under workers' compensation, to be determined if it's an employee, you set the time that they come to work, the time that they
Oh,
leave,
yeah.
and lunch, et cetera. So this is strictly for payroll purposes,
Yeah.
to be treated as an employee, not as telling them when to come to work.
Yeah.
That's what the full sentence says.
Right.
When you read the full sentence, it says, in order to assist with internal payroll practices as determined appropriate for Rutherford County Human Resources and Finance Department.
Well, see, I could have highlighted a little more and I guess added to that question that I didn't understand. I know what a subcontractor is and how they're handled, but to assist with internal payroll practices, I guess was another part of that question. I just needed that explained, and it makes perfect sense how you said it. And I'm gonna throw this out there because it's honest truth. This did not, I want to make it clear, I am a spouse of a county employee before I say anything else. This did not affect me when the county employees' spouses were not allowed to stay on county insurance if they had insurance available. And I totally understood it. I get it. I do have a problem with the amount of money we spend for legal services, and I just feel like possibly that it's a kind of a slap in the face to county employees that are now out of pocket. I know one in particular, a little over $400 a month because he's had to get insurance at his employer, and we're giving ourselves insurance, and we're giving the highway commission and the school board and the county attorney insurance, and our greatest assets, spouses, if they have insurance available to them, are not allowed to be on the insurance. So that's a statement, that's not a question. It's nothing that I'm going to say no about because of that. It's just a statement. My next one is under section 2, the very heading, and I think I know the answer to this, but again, I want to clarify, litigation and extra services. Can you just very briefly define or give an example or two of what extra services are?
Yeah, that was just the term. It's defined itself in subsection B. And so it doesn't say in subsection B that litigation and extra services shall include but not be limited to the following. It defines it. So 1, 2, and 3 is what deals with it. The reason that it says extra services is because there are things that aren't litigation, like for example in number 2 or number 3. So that's why it's just termed that way, and it's defined and it's limited. So the things that are encompassed within litigation and extra services are right there in B, 1, 2, and 3.
So an example of that would be acquisitions by eminent domain.
That would be a litigation, but matters relating to title examinations of land may be extra services.
Right. Okay.
And I really can't think, it may have been a while now since there was actually a county condemnation proceeding, but it's conceivable as the county continues to grow that those might be necessary in the future.
Right. On the acquisitions, somebody else may be able to answer this. Maybe better, I don't know. You want me to be quiet?
I'll listen to the music.
Oh. It sounded better than what I was talking about. How many times, how often is it that we do the eminent domain or exercise that eminent domain?
That may be
Is it rare?
Well,
or?
the last one I remember may have been maybe Halls Hill Pike. But it's been a while, and Mr. McAdoo may know. Yeah.
There was 109 parcels out on Halls Hill Pike, and they couldn't find all the owners. So it was done out there. The biggest one we had done was over here at our new judicial building, which was tied up in court for years until we finally got it settled. As soon as we got it settled, we started on that project. But the latest one, you're exactly right, Halls Hill Pike.
So it sounds like it's pretty rare.
Very rare.
Most of the time we can negotiate and,
Right.
take care of business. Okay. I think, and y'all can save the applause for later, but I think I'm down to my last one. The school board has its own attorney on staff. And from the meetings I've been to or watched, Mr. Reed is typically at those school school board meetings. Is he required to be at every one of them?
That'd be a question for Mr. Reed.
Okay.
But this contract, in terms of the county attorney portion under section 1 is with me.
Right.
And your subsection H on the very last page, it talks about the school board, but it speaks specifically to subsection 2, which primarily deals with the firm and the litigations. It's often the case that when litigations come in, because Jeff is a member in our firm handles those litigations against the school board. So that's why it mentions that it envisions that the litigations under Section 2 will be handled by our firm, but it's understood that the Rutherford County Board of Education has its right to its own attorney under state law, who is Mr. Reed.
Does his time there, that's part of the school board's budget?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's not inclusive of this.
One of the last meetings I watched, I think the only time he was called upon was to give some direction based on a motion to table, and of course that was addressed, and so it was more of a rules of order type questions than anything, and that was the only reason. I didn't hear him get up and say anything else the rest of the time, and I thought, shoot, we're paying him 100 and whatever it is an hour to point out who's next and what motions can be made. I would think the school board attorney, having a law degree, would be able to answer those questions.
These would be questions for Mr. Reed.
Okay. Well, it just stuck out to me, and that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion, or what's the will of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I move for the approval of this agreement.
So to send it on to the budget
Send
committee?
it on to budget.
Second.
Mr. McAdoo seconds. Any more discussion? Let's call the roll on this one.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Cush?
Yes.
Commissioner McAdoo?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes. All right, thank you to all involved with that. Is there any other business to be brought forward before the committee? Mayor Ketchum.
Mr. Chairman, going back to the private act that you pulled on the steering committee, we've been in contact with Vicki. Vicki says that I, as the mayor, appoint the public at-large position on insurance committee. The steering committee appoints the employee representative. So you'll need to make that announcement tonight.
You got the,
Unless she's wrong. She's usually not wrong.
so this is the resolution redefining roles and responsibilities of benefits and insurance committee. And I guess that's now called the risk management committee. So they had sent this to me a couple of months ago when we were talking about adding those school board members to the committee. And it says that the structure of the committee will be made up of the following: county mayor, 3 county commissioners appointed by the steering committee, 1 Rutherford Education Association representative appointed by the Rutherford Education Association, 4 members at large to be appointed by the county mayor for 2-year terms, except the initial term of 2 at-large members shall be 1 year, 5 employees of Rutherford County, including 2 employees from the Board of Education to be selected by the school superintendent, 1 employee from the Sheriff's Department to be selected by the sheriff, 1 employee from the Highway Department to be selected by the highway superintendent, and 2 employees from the county general to be selected by the Benefits and Insurance Committee from applications forwarded with recommendations of their department head. So, but we can still make the announcement that the vacancy's there. Commissioner McAdoo.
I serve on the insurance committee, and I'm gonna tell you how I got on the insurance committee. Mayor Burgess couldn't get anybody to serve on the insurance committee, so he called me in the office and asked me would I serve on the insurance committee. And I said yes, so I've been on there ever since. And based on serving on the insurance committee, I don't get no pay for it, per se, because my committee meets the same night. And so, you know, I do not get no pay on it. But what I want to bring out that the mayor did appoint me to the commission. to that insurance committee and inform the commission that he done it. I don't know, I might be serving the legal, I just want to make sure.
So, don't say that, because I'll vote you back. Go back and retract.
Well, moving forward, I think this is the way we need to do it. That's what was passed. So if we want to change that, we can, but
What was the date on that?
it's 2007, May 2007.
Pretty recent.
So I don't remember any changes since 2010, since I've been here to it, but maybe there was, but this is what Mr. Spence sent to me. So anyway, it sounds like that committee needs to just put an agenda item on there and solicit applications and see what comes in. So, is there any other business?
I do want to, Ms. Brown, you may already know this, but I won't tell you in case you don't. This, somebody may have already told her. This goes before the commission next Thursday, the 16th. Based on that vote, someone could appoint from the floor or nominate somebody from the floor of the commission. And if the commission, approves that person, so this is not necessarily a done deal, but
Well, I appreciate the consideration.
but anyway, once you're approved at that commission, then your next BZA meeting would be the second Wednesday of June. And they meet at 4 in here for 30 minutes and then go out there at 4:30 to have, they kind of review in here and then go have the committee meeting. And your mind can tell you that much. I just want to let you know, you still got to go through the commission next Thursday. Might be good for you to be in the audience.
I'll be there. Thank you.
Is there any other business? If not, the meeting's adjourned.